Alright, so we're gonna try this again. No guarantees if it'll work. Alright. We're gonna rank up next game. Back. I'm trying to see if I'm live. Says that we are recording. It's not happening. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Let's get we're gonna pretty much camp so we can get a guaranteed spot. I'm just trying to get as much as I can, so I think let's see if this will work.
Andrew got off of his horse and walked towards Steve at this point. Both of them looked at the laughing birds, confused. Then one of them spoke and said, "We enjoyed dancing with you boys." My uncle really didn't enjoy the fact that he had danced with a witch, so he took out his gun and started shooting at the birds. They just flew around and laughed at him more. Then he started swearing at them. They didn't appreciate it, so one of them flew down and clawed at my uncle's face. He only got a little scratch, so thankfully he was okay. The birds took off, thanking Steve for the dance still and saying his name. My uncle had never given any of the girls uncles from going to parties. A while back, I was chosen to be in an indie film about jinns, basically the local versions of demons. Before I continue, there are 4 things you should know about them. 1. It is said that they can take the form of animals and humans with circle eyes, literally circles for eyes. 2. They are supposedly born from smokeless fire. 3. They feed on energy, such as the energy you use to stay awake and the energy used to power electronics. And 4, an extra one. There are Christian jinns, Muslim jinns, you name it. They have their own free will, so everyone is different. Some are very nice, others not so much. So now for the tale. We were filming in the desert and a series of events started to occur. Right when we arrived, there was instantly a presence of something there. Then a knife, bent, twisted, with red marks, started appearing at my feet every 15 meters or so. Constantly, for the entire time that I was in the desert, this knife would follow me. 4 nights or so into filming, right as we were packing up, a loud screech could be heard. It was sort of a mix between a falcon, a wolf, and a mountain lion. It was later revealed to us by an expert of desert animals that there were no animals in the desert that made that sort of sound. On the 5th night, things began to get interesting. At one point we were sitting down taking a break when the sand just started to smoke. We thought that maybe a small plant had combusted because of the heat. After a minute or two, the smoke stopped. We checked, and there was no plant. We sat back down, and the second our butts hit the seat, boom, the sand all around the smoking area, and where the smoke had been, burst into flames, with zero reasons to. Then, after that, all of our cameras started to lose their batteries very, very quickly. This was frightening because 1, it meant that we had to stay there longer, and 2, as mentioned in number 3 at the top, they feed on energy. The next night, albino scorpions, which are extremely rare, started sprinting toward the actors, literally going at full speed. We were forced to kill these rare creatures by burning them with a torch, and every time one died, 2 would replace it. Literally, 2 more would come out of nowhere, full speed ahead. This continued for several minutes. Things like this kept happening for the entire 2 weeks or so that we were at the site. When we finished filming, we split up for a bit to let the director edit some stuff. Then we had to film parts at a house. It is important here to mention that the movie was called 3 a.m. We were talking, and one of the actors stated that since we had to split up, he had woken up at 3 a.m. every morning, his dogs going crazy, his alarm clock going off, and his AC setting itself to 3 degrees Celsius. 2 of the other actors revealed that the same thing had been happening to them. At the same time, I had never felt alone while I was in my room at night. Something was watching us. It followed us home. Since then, we have finished the film. I've started praying for protection every night based on the events that have happened. The actor who originally had the alarm go off at 3 a.m. moved to another house. Another actor moved to Canada. We were filming in UAE, which is in the Middle East, so this was pretty far away. The second actor also moved internationally, and I am moving in 4 weeks or so. I'm just hoping that it doesn't follow me home again. When I was younger and inexperienced, I decided to go to a spot in my small town that is supposed to be haunted. The story goes back to the 60s, when a man and a woman with 2 children got into a major argument, and she decided to leave with her kids. She packed up and left with her son and daughter, and began to head over a small bridge just south of town, when she noticed that the husband was coming after her in his vehicle. Outraged, he ran her off the bridge and killed her and the 2 children. She now wanders the bed of what used to be a river, looking for her kids. So my buddy and I were investigating there, and we didn't hear anything, so we decided to go to the other side of the river. We were using EVP only at that time. The few hours we stayed there, we didn't pick up anything. We went home, transferred the sound to a computer, and plugged the computer into our television, and then we heard a few sounds. One was at a time in the investigation when my buddy had tripped over a stick poking out of the ground, and you could hear a little girl giggling. The second was when we decided to move to the other side of the river and announced to the ghosts present that we were moving, and we heard the most eerie, slow-speaking voice of the little girl that said, "Please don't leave me." We were never touched or harmed in any way, but after a while we realized that we failed to introduce ourselves and that we did not ask anything present to not follow or attach itself to us. The night afterward, my mother told me that she was going to take a bath and asked us if anyone else had to use the restroom. My friends and I said no, and we continued to play our video game. Next thing we know, we heard screams coming from the bathroom. My stepfather ran into the bathroom, and my mother came out wrapped in a towel, mad and upset that we went ghost hunting, and she believed that something was messing with her. She went to her room and got dressed, and came back out and said that her back was burning. I lifted up the back of her shirt to see my initials scratched into her skin. At this time, I was a bit worried and frightened, and I told her to lay on the couch so that I could keep an eye on her, as she said that she was tired. She then woke up a few hours later, but didn't seem fully awake, almost as if she were in a trance, sweating profusely and her hair was soaked. She began mumbling weird things that we couldn't understand, and started saying 666 and drawing a pentagram in the air with her finger. I decided to look up a prayer, hoping that this would help. I ended up finding the St. Michael prayer, and my friends and I began chanting it. As we were chanting, she began screaming and cursing in a disembodied voice, and then suddenly dropped back down to the couch and passed back out. She woke up like nothing had even happened, and was confused as we explained. After time passed and nothing else occurred, I decided to go to a friend's house who was female. As I was headed there, I got a text message notification that said, "Where are you going? You're not." I clicked on the notification to finish reading the message, but the text had vanished. I called my mother and asked if anyone from the house had messaged me, and she said no. So ignoring it, I went on over to my friend's house. It was around 1 a.m., so we went to her room and laid in bed, and she got up saying that she had to go to the restroom. As I lay there, I began to hear growling noises coming from her bedroom closet. When she got back, because I wasn't going to go and look, I asked, "Do you have a dog in your closet or something?" And she replied, "No, I don't own a dog. We're not allowed to have animals here." I was freaked out the rest of the night, and didn't fall asleep until almost 4 a.m., listening to see if I could hear anything else. After awakening, of course, I was really tired. I called my mother to make sure everything was okay, and she said that nothing else happened while I was gone. And nothing else has happened since. Moral of the story is don't meddle in things that you don't understand or have not studied or prepared to deal with. I'm still interested in ghost hunting, and may do so in the future as I'm now more educated on the subject, and will take better precautions from here on out. I live in England in a 2-story flat, and I have always believed in the paranormal. But my dad does not believe in any type of ghost or anything supernatural. I never thought that this flat was haunted. However, as I got older, I started to feel uncomfortable by myself, and I saw shadows downstairs out of the corner of my eye. Now, there is an attic directly above our second floor, but there is no way for us to enter it, as you cannot access it from this flat. The only way to access this attic is by having a specific key that can open the attic, as it is council flats, which is above my neighbor's house. However, the attic above my flat is the only one which is blocked off, and there is no way to enter it. I have the last flat on the end of these 18 council flats. There are no neighbors above us, just the attic, which no one can access without that key, and they would still not be able to get above our flat. One night about 2 years ago, all of the family was in bed, and it was about 3 in the morning. All of a sudden, I heard something crash above. It was so loud that it woke all my family members up, and we all got up and stood on the landing together. After that bang, we heard 3 loud footsteps, and the sound of something being dragged behind these footsteps. It was so scary, as we know that nobody can physically get up there. My dad was not convinced that it was a ghost. He thought that somebody had somehow gotten into the attic, so he went outside to check if the communal attic door was opened. I followed him outside, and it was completely padlocked shut with heavy chains around the lock. I tried to explain to him, how can there be anyone up in our part of the attic when it's blocked off and impossible to get into? We came back into the house, and we were all quite shaken up. My brother was young, and was able to get to sleep, but I was awake all night. After this experience, I started to smell old cigarette smoke every time I would enter my toilet, and it was so stale and stagnant. After the event, me, my brother, and my mom were going away on holiday, whilst my dad had to stay there and work. He told me he slept with his headphones in every night, as even he felt uncomfortable by himself. As a family, we still have no idea what those noises were, and since then we have heard many strange things.
The revived flight will arrive in 1 minute.
This happened in January of 2016 when I was in my late teens. The story keeps coming up amongst my friend group, and something about it kind of bugs me. I have no clue what I really saw. I just know that it seemed paranormal, and not anything that could be explained. I live about 2 hours away from an abandoned campus that was used as both a tuberculosis hospital and an asylum until the 1990s. I didn't really research it, nor did I believe in the paranormal at the time. I just thought that it would be so cool to go to an abandoned place. So I brought my 2 guy friends with me, one my age who was into the paranormal and had been there before, and one who was older than us, and my one friend that was a girl. I'm also a girl. It's one of those places that you'd get in trouble for trespassing at, so we hid my car and snuck in through a broken fence. I should mention that we went at around 8 or 9 p.m., so it was really dark out already. We go into the main building and are fine. We're not feeling anything weird, nothing like that. We exit that building and go into another that's maybe 2 buildings away, but within a couple of minutes we end up at the exact place where we exited the first building, the main entrance, and that felt a little off. We decided to venture into the basement. My girlfriend and I felt uneasy immediately, and suggested that we go back upstairs instead, which we did. We go up into the place where they kept children. This was evident because of all the children's toys on the ground, and there was a soundproof room. Some of the toys were moving, and there was a ball that was bouncing on its own. Our friend who's been there before stopped us while we were walking through a hallway. We heard a door slam, followed by footsteps in front of us. The hallway in front of us was also pitch black, while the rear of the hall was at least lit up a little bit by the moon. We turned around and went back. Against our better judgment, we let the boys bring us into the basement. As soon as my girlfriend stepped her foot onto the basement floor, her flashlight went out, and we couldn't get it back on for the life of us. It did end up coming back on later, but that didn't happen until we had already left the premises. Anyway, my phone that was at 80% immediately died. We were standing in the center of the room together, and around us, it was almost like a haze was there. I felt so sick and lightheaded. I had a dread in the pit of my stomach, and so did my friends. We felt like we were surrounded by other people. We quickly went back upstairs. This is when it gets extremely unsettling. We go into the ballroom and grab a table. We sit on it, each of us on an end. It was square. We heard a door slam shut, so I look up at the ceiling to avoid looking around the room. My friend who's into the paranormal starts trying to communicate with whatever was in there with us. He said, "Knock once if you're a boy and twice if you're a girl," and we heard one knock. As this was happening, I see a black figure that's almost human-looking sitting in the windowsill. It's kind of hunched over and very tall. Its leg is swinging, and then it takes off. It's crawling across the ceiling. I tug on my other guy friend's arm, and he shakes his head as to not acknowledge it, and I try to forget it. My girlfriend says out loud, "You guys see?" But my guy friend, who is ignoring it, cut her off and said, "Stop." My guy friend, who is trying to communicate with this thing, told it to come and sit down. We felt the air get freezing, and that's when he said, "We have to go. Goodbye. You're not allowed to follow us out." We all jumped up off the table and walked out. After we were out, we practically ran to the car and left as quickly as we could. As soon as I was in the car, I felt so much better physically. We were silent for a while, but then my friend who was ignoring the figure said, "Did you guys see that?" And of course we all said yes, and shared our experiences. He thanked my girlfriend and I for getting the message about ignoring it as much as possible. It still scares me to think about it to this day, and I always get chills when writing or talking about it. The amount of energy needed to manifest that is what boggles my mind the most. I'm not even completely sure what we saw, and as much as we discuss it, we cannot come to a solid conclusion.
Holographic decoys released.
In high school, my friends and I knew a guy named Gene. For whatever reason, Gene had a habit of telling extremely tall tales centered on himself, as if he were trying to make himself look cooler. The most repeated one was his claim that in a nearby ravine, a coven of druids practiced and were schooling him in ancient magic. He always played them straight, as if they were unquestionably true. He never had any evidence. While taking a walk one night, I happened upon a construction site. Being heavily into urban exploration, I explored the heck out of that site, and upon leaving, tipped over their porta potty. I was still a bit immature, and I thought it was funny. After that, whenever I found one, over it went. One day I told some friends about it, and Gene, ever the showman, chimed in with, "Oh, that's nothing. I like to burn them down." Arson was most assuredly not our thing, and we knew that Gene was full of it, so we were just surprised when, calling his bluff, he offered to prove it by showing us the fruits of his labors. 5 of us piled into the car, only one of us had a car, and followed Gene's instructions. The site was in a rural area with lots of big hills and dense forest, common in the Pacific Northwest. At a sharp elbow on a 2-lane road was a gravel turnoff leading maybe 100 feet into the woods to a gravel parking lot. This was the starting point for a number of hiking trails. There were no lights there, and the street light out on the road didn't show very much through the trees. Also, there were no other cars. One of the trails began past a gate that was designed to keep off-roaders from the trails, and it took a sharp left turn from the back of the parking lot. The porta potty had been about 30 feet or so up the trail, and on a later visit by day, we found out that Gene really did burn it into a puddle of blue goo. That night, we didn't make it there. We had a couple of flashlights, and we all started up the trail as a group. As far as I can recall, we never heard any noises, animal or human. We got about halfway to the spot, then all of us stopped walking. Someone whispered, "Do you feel that?" And we all bolted down the trail, piled back into the car, and got the hell out of there. Once on the road, we compared thoughts. I felt what everyone else did. The deepest, most intense, raw fear that I have ever endured. It was like we suddenly faced impending death. It clearly indicated, I need to leave right this instant. I can only guess that there might have been a cougar or something, as they've been known to attack hikers, but we saw and heard absolutely nothing. I've read that if a little voice in your head tells you to do something, it's a good idea to listen. Part of me wonders if Gene's porta potty fire pissed off some forest spirit or something. I've been back to that trailhead a few times during the day to show friends where this happened. I've also brought a friend who's quote-unquote sensitive, as they say, and they didn't pick up anything. I've had a few odd experiences, including seeing a couple of ghosts, some strange lights in the sky several times, and some other stuff. This is the only unexplainable experience that I've had which was deeply scary. I first discovered the Ouija board when I was 14. A girl was visiting from America, I'm in the UK, and she told us how to talk to ghosts. 8 of us went to her house and made a board with ripped bits of paper and a turned wine glass. 4 of us would put our fingers on the glass, and we would swap someone out every so often. This way we believed that it would eliminate anyone who might be pushing the glass. I'll add here that the finger that had been in the glass always felt cold afterward. Don't know if others have noticed this. The first few days were spent asking silly questions like, does so-and-so fancy me, or who will I marry, etc. On the 3rd day, things took a darker turn, and we started getting responses told to us without asking. It started saying things like, so-and-so will get run over, and X will die of cancer, and other really freaky shit. This scared us, and we stopped playing. Years later, in my early 20s, I shared a flat with my brother and boyfriend at the time, and bored one night we decided to do a Ouija board. So we made a board, as I had when I was younger, and set to it. It didn't take long for the glass to move, and we asked who it was, where they came from, and how they had died. It told us its name was Bill. He was an old hippie, and he had died from an overdose. Anyhow, things went on for a while, then my boyfriend, who was convinced that we were the ones pushing the glass, said if there's really a ghost here, prove it. I kid you not. Not a second later, the lights went out. At that time, I had one of those old-fashioned meters that you had to put money in, so after my initial shock, I reasoned that I needed to put a coin in the meter and stood up to do it. But before I got to the door, the lights came back on. Somewhat spooked, I sat back down and me and my brother put our fingers back on the glass. My boyfriend point-blank refused. The glass then spelled out, "Chilly trick, hey." After that, it kept going in circles and moving toward me, so I decided that enough was enough and said goodbye. A few years ago, after Facebook started and I got back in touch with my old school friends, I heard that one of them had died of cancer in his late teens. Not sure about the other prophecy, but I know that I'll never do a Ouija board again, and I firmly believe that we do tap into forces beyond our 5 senses. I grew up not far from Manteno State Hospital. It's an abandoned insane asylum in the far south Chicago suburbs. My dad would sometimes drive my family down there, and we'd circle around the property by car just for fun. When I turned 16, he bought me my own little beater car, and of course, I had to show this awesome place to my friends. By the time I was old enough to go exploring, many of the original buildings had been renovated and repurposed as businesses. Half of the property was converted into a local VA hospital, and a quarter of it was torn down and replaced with new housing. Only a handful of the original buildings remained, all clustered in the back corner of the campus. One summer day, I took friends A, B, and C to go check it out. We brought our cameras and went with the intent to go inside and explore it. We parked in a lot where other people parked to go to work in one of the other buildings to avoid suspicion, and walked about a quarter mile to the abandoned hall. As we walked up to this creepy old building, I felt sick to my stomach and full of dread. The main doors were chained shut, and most of the windows were boarded up. I remembered walking on the porchway and As we walked up to this creepy old building, I felt sick to my stomach and full of dread. I am a female in her early 20s. I live in the U.S. in a desert state, a town in the middle of nowhere. I come from a military family, generations of Air Force and Army, and a grandfather who was involved in Project Blue Book. I was sitting alone in my house, playing some Gwent on PS4, when my little sister and her friend came rushing through the door.
The revived flight will arrive in 1 minute. Holographic decoys released. Airdrop incoming. The revived flight will arrive in 1 minute. Airdrop incoming. Airdrop has been delivered. The revived flight will arrive in 1 minute. Chip terminal is almost ready. The safe zone is collapsing. Airdrop has been delivered. Half of the teams are eliminated. Revived flight will arrive in 1 minute. The revived flight will arrive in 1 minute. The safe zone is collapsing. Airdrop incoming. Airdrop has been delivered. The last revived flight will arrive in 1 minute. Down to the last 5 teams.